If you live in Arizona, in or around the Phoenix area, and you're considering bankruptcy, you'll love this tip from Christy Thompson of ArizonaLegalAdvocacy.com.
Talk to me a little bit more about planning. What are some specific steps that will help me to prepare for bankruptcy?
Specifically, we need to first determine what's your income. Would you qualify for a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13? That's the first step. Now, you can determine this yourself. There's a lot of information on the Internet, and there's a lot of free bankruptcy websites that will offer you the means test, which is the test to determine whether you qualify for 7 or whether you qualify for 13. And so I take a peek at those first, and in fact, you can find a bankruptcy calculator on my website under Bankruptcy Homework at ArizonaLegalAdvocacy.com. That's a good place to start. So first of all, let's determine your income. And, a lot of people will say, but wait a minute, my income fluctuates. Well, okay. What have you made specifically in the last 6 months? Because the court looks at what you've earned in the last 6 months. So let's say I'm an individual who works strictly on commission. Maybe I'm a real estate agent or I'm an insurance agent, and I just received a $10,000 commission payment. But in the last 5 months, I haven't earned anything, unfortunately, and that's what's really making it difficult for me to pay my bills. So my first question would be, in the last 6 months, you've earned $10,000. So really, we could average that out over 6 months, and that would be your entire income. And so for a single person, if you divide 42 in half, you can make $21,000 in 6 months. Now, this particular client, this commission client, has only earned $10,000. So they clearly, from an income perspective, qualify for a 7. So that's one of your first steps. Look at your income. Now, you're going to have questions about cars. What are they worth? Again, education is key. Figure out what your car is worth by checking Kelley Blue Book. It's a great place to start. Figure that out, subtract it from the loan. Are you upside down? Do you have equity? Establish that. The third step that you're going to take is look at your cash reserves. How much money do you have on hand? And when I say that, I don't just mean what you have in your checking account or your savings account. What do you have in stocks? What do you have in bonds? Because those have cash value. And if they do, what you may want to consider doing is cashing them out and maybe catching up on that house payment that you haven't made or catching up on that car payment. And you would do that if you intend to hold on to those. Now, maybe you have cash in the form of stocks or you just received maybe a little bit of inheritance. You can invest that in another way. You could open an IRA, for example, and wait 4 months and then file bankruptcy. And that's a really good planning tip. And that's something that, again, if you met with a bankruptcy attorney, they would take you through these steps and look at it. So after you looked at your cash reserves and you've looked at your income and you've looked at the value of your car, you now want to consider what are the value of the things that you have in your home. Now, many things in Arizona can be exempted, namely personal property. So I get that question a lot. Will I have to give back my sofa, my dining room set? Well, really the question will be, have you paid off the debt that was attached to it? And secondly, what is it worth? If it is, in fact, paid in full and there isn't any debt, then you value it as if you were be selling it at a garage sale. And that's a unique thing about bankruptcy court. It looks at what you could get for something today, not what you would get, what you would hope to get, or what you believe you could sell it for, but really what you could get it for today. And so the majority of my clients, really more than 90%, to be honest, their value of their personal items as a single person, typically no more than $4,000, which is the court's cutoff. And typically for a couple, really no more than $8,000. And again, that's the court's cutoff as well. So yes, the answer is you can keep your personal items. You want to start taking an inventory of everything you have. And if you're, if you question it, say for example, you received some jewelry as an inheritance. Well, let's find out. Let's look at eBay. Let's go to a pawn shop and find out what these things are worth. Secondly, What about those toys that maybe you've bought? Maybe you've bought a motorcycle. Maybe you've bought some ATVs. Now, in a Chapter 7, those can be something that the court can take and sell. So, again, for the purposes of planning, you may want to consider doing that yourself. And again, paying off some things that you intend to keep, possibly your car or your house, or maybe paying forward on your daycare, or consider paying forward on your utilities. And the reason that I point that out is you're allowed to do that prior to filing bankruptcy. You can take your assets, you can liquidate them, and you can pay for those things that are necessary for you. Daycare is a necessary expense. Utilities are a necessary expense. Food and clothing, and again, a necessary expense. Of course, your mortgage, necessary. So those are some of the things that you need to consider. Now, because we just talked about Chapter 13, when it comes to Chapter 13, it's more lenient with regards to the things you can keep. So if you truly intend to keep those toys, you can, but you need to recognize the fact that you will be paying back your debt. You won't actually be liquidating your debt, and there's the difference. So sit down, be realistic about what your plan is, start to educate yourself, start valuing the things that you have, consider what your income is. And again, a bankruptcy consultation with an attorney is an excellent way to find out all of this. A big question that I get all the time is a lot of individuals have chosen to take a loan from family members before filing. That's pretty typical. And they've been paying that creditor back, their mom or dad or an uncle. However, the court looks back 90 days before we file bankruptcy and wants to ensure that you haven't been treating any particular creditor better than the other. They call that a preferential treatment. And so, yes, if you have taken a loan from mom and dad, you do need to list them as a creditor, and you also need to stop paying them because the court doesn't want to see within 90 days before you file. And the reason the 90 days is a bright line, so to speak, is because that's the time the court's determined you must have known or should have known at that point that you were insolvent, that you didn't have the ability to pay your debts. And so if you're paying one creditor versus the other, the court says, why don't you give that money to me after we file, and I'll distribute it to all your creditors. So if you are paying on your debts but contemplating bankruptcy, you should truly consider stop paying all of your creditors so as to avoid being treated as if one creditor was preferred or treated better than another. Everybody's circumstances are different. But, individuals who come in that have tax debt, some income tax debt can be dischargeable. And so, again, timing is everything. Individuals who've just received a large sum of money that they can't spend down on certain things, you can open an IRA. But, again, timing is everything. You have to wait a certain period of time. When you change title to your vehicle and who you've titled it to is, again, all about timing. So there's so many little critical timing points in bankruptcy that if you follow them, you really can see a complete wipe-off of that debt. But you also may find that after filing bankruptcy, maybe your car's been paid for several months, and that's going to free up income for you. So with good planning and a good bankruptcy lawyer, it will take you much further than doing this on your own. Again, my intent is to really educate people, treat it like a financial plan, not something that you run into my office with your hair on fire, but something that we treat as a long-term plan that's going to get you ahead in your life and further your income.
Thanks, Christy. We appreciate you answering our questions. If you have specific questions for Christy or would like to find out more about filing for bankruptcy in or around Phoenix, Arizona, visit Christy's website at ArizonaLegalAdvocacy.com.